Marvel's The Thunderbolts has now officially been released in theaters, and with that, it means it is time to go into full spoilers for this movie. So that's exactly what I'm going to be doing here for you guys, is giving you my spoiler review for Thunderbolts, talking about some of its best moments, some of the things I thought didn't work as well, also definitely the post-credit scene that really sets us up for Avengers Doomsday, along with everything and anything in between. But it's not just going to be about my opinion. I need you guys also turn that comment section into a discussion. How did you feel about Marvel's Thunderbolts? Is this one of the better Marvel movies post-Endgame? As well as your theories on where this takes us in the future of the MCU. Alright, so just kind of jumping into it, again, I found Thunderbolts really refreshing. It brought me back to the old MCU. That's the kind of vibe I got watching Thunderbolts. It just reminded me of a time where this world was really exciting. It was filled with really interesting characters. I loved the group dynamic and how the movie ended up being an allegory for depression. It managed to tie all those themes together while still being able to throw the laughs, action, and everything else you expect from Marvel. I will say I do hate that some people are calling the Thunderbolts a real movie as opposed to some of the other lesser Marvel films that have come out lately. Things like an Ant-Man the Wasp Quantumania, the Marvels, or maybe even Captain America Brave New World. I wouldn't really say Thunderbolts is finally a real movie. I just think after having a row of disappointments and underwhelming films, this reminded us, oh man, Marvel can still do really cool stuff. So let's just start off with beginning of the movie, working our way down to that post-credits scene. So the opening of the film kind of really took me by surprise. It opens with a monologue from Yelena. We're following her as she carries out a mission for Val to get rid of some evidence of wrongdoing so she doesn't lose her spot in the government circle. But it was really the monologue by Yelena where she's just like,
there's something wrong with me. An emptiness.
there's a void, there's a darkness, I feel sad, and that carries on throughout the rest of the film. You know, we joke around about Thunderbolts being Marvel's The Suicide Squad, and in DC, the Suicide Squad is named that because if they refuse to do the mission they do, they'll end up dead, so it's suicide not to do it, but they're also being sent out on a suicide mission where they'll most likely be killed. Looking at it here, the Thunderbolts could genuinely also be called the Suicide Squad because every member of the team is actually suicidal. Oh my... Kevin Feige, brilliant! Brilliant! And honestly, that's not even a joke. If you've seen the movie, there are a couple of times, and I've seen the film twice now, where a handful of these characters have moments where they're about to die and they fully accept it and even look at peace with them looking to die. And that was such an interesting, powerful way to go with this movie, even more so with what they did with the Sentry. But not getting too ahead of myself, backing up a little bit before we get to the Sentry, Yelena again is feeling empty to the point that she goes and visits her father, Red Guardian, played by David Harbour. And dude, just anytime Red Guardian is on screen talking, he just eats up the scenery. Every piece of dialogue he had just had me laughing so hard. Like when he thinks it's DoorDash at the door, so he's like, your subordinates will be reported to DoorDash HQ. Good stuff. But essentially through the talk that they have, Red Guardian mentions, you know, the happiest time I felt is when I was Red Guardian, when I was the Captain America for Russia, serving my country and saving my people.
You feel fulfilled?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so full, so filled.
Your sister, Natasha, knew that, and it's probably why she was an Avenger, to kind of feel fulfilled and like she's putting some good in the world, and Red Guardian suggests, hey, maybe you should do that for yourself. So that's where she agrees and gets sent off on one last mission that Val needs that ends up being a trap, where all the members of the Thunderbolts were sent there to kill off one another. And so kind of breaking down that vault scene, just one, the fight sequences between them, really great. I'm not going to say this was like top 10 best fight scenes in the MCU, but it really did showcase their powers, and I also thought it was effective in what they were good at. But it was also here where we started quickly seeing the dynamic between the team, how dysfunctional they are, but yet they're still able to work together and actually get something done. I think this is where I want to individually talk about each member of the Thunderbolts and what they brought to the table. Starting off with, let's just get it out of the way, Taskmaster. What were they thinking? Heavily advertising Taskmaster, pretending like she was gonna make it to this scene in the movie, because early on in the trailers, they did Photoshop her in there. But you could honestly summarize his Taskmaster's appearance as a cameo, because it's less than about 3 to 4 minutes of screen time. She was essentially brought in to kill John Walker, US agent, but Ghost was the one brought in to kill her, and she manages to get the job done and takes a bullet to the head, ending Taskmaster in the MCU. Look, I'll admit, I think they did do Taskmaster a little dirty, but I still think Taskmaster as a character, bro, that's a character you need to give a second chance in the MCU, because that's such a cool power. This muscle memory ability, being able to copy anyone's fight style and whatever weapon they're using, whether it's a sword, a shield, or some gauntlets, that's just such a cool power, and I feel like Marvel just fumbled it. It also, in a weird way, left kind of a sour taste in my mouth for the Ghost character, because I mean, she actually killed her. And, you know, Yelena, having been with Black Widow and knowing the backstory of Taskmaster, there is a part of Yelena that feels a little bad for her. You kind of just killed someone I kind of like. And, like, to make matters worse, there's even a scene where they just scour through her gadgets and body parts and like, oh, she doesn't need this, she doesn't need that. Oh, she would have wanted me to have this. Okay, man. The Taskmaster disrespect in full swing. But I guess jumping off that point to Ghost, she was someone that I just thought was okay in Ant-Man and the Wasp when they were introduced. I was honestly very shocked when it was announced she would be part of the Thunderbolts, but hey, she's like one of the only characters with a unique ability, this phasing power. I love that added comment they made where it's like, oh, I can only do it for like about a minute. And there was even some weapons with a high-pitched sound that kind of ruined her phase shifting. So I always like when they balance out those powers and don't just make them overpowered for no reason. But probably a real standout to me, and something that's going to lead me to complain big time with what Marvel decided to do with his introduction, John Walker, US agent. Dude is such a lovable a-hole. It's so fascinating seeing the discourse online amongst fans, because I mean, it's almost like a Homelander situation where there's real people who super sympathize with his version of Captain America, and some who think he should still be the real Captain America. And if you still think that after watching Thunderbolts, ooh boy, you just missed a lot of points that went over your head, because they full out address it like, dude, okay, you're trying to do right, you're trying to redeem yourself, but there's no way you can be the real Captain America. You're an a-hole, you got a big ego and anger issues, my guy. Yet, even with all those traits, you can see the glimmer of heart, the glimmer of niceness in him that makes him likable. And so maybe that's what more people are drawn to, is just this nuance of John Walker and how the broken side of him actually makes him more relatable. Because as much as we would all like to think if we got the super soldier serum, we'd be as good as Cap America, most of us would end up a John Walker. Bro, I was even shocked they brought up his whole kill scene from Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That is a real debate amongst fans online whether he was justified in murdering that person or whether he was in the wrong of killing someone who was surrendering to him. Because Ghost says, didn't you kill an innocent man in the public? And then John Walker responds with, define innocent. Just literally the fight fans have online with that scene. But they're repeatedly calling him Dime Store Cap America, and he even had a moment where they're trying to like destroy a fuse box where he says, on your left. Bro is stealing them Captain America lines. But I mentioned there's something I want to complain about. John Walker is definitive proof that, man, Marvel, you messed up with giving Sam Wilson Captain America his first movie as this Red Hulk story that turned out to be really empty and kind of just okay for the character. Sam Wilson's first Captain America movie should have been a version of what Falcon and the Winter Soldier was on Disney+. That show should have been turned into the first movie and would have really have showcased John Walker into the MCU with a film, because when you really look at the team, he's kind of the only one that comes from a Disney+ show, while all these other characters made debuts in movies. That's going to be another fumble on Marvel's part, but it's also showing you just how well of a job they did in this movie with kind of giving you tidbits of everyone's backstory without you having to feel like, oh, I didn't watch Black Widow, I didn't watch Ant-Man the Wasp, or I didn't watch those episodes of Falcon and Winter Soldier. They did a real good job of just giving you quick lines of dialogue of where they came from, major points in their backstories to how they are now, and not all of it was treated as a gag. Like, it was just genuinely treated as simple information. The last thing I want want to gush about with John Walker, which is something I noticed in my second time watching it. After Bob, who we know is the Sentry, and he has these abilities to send a character into the void where they relive their past trauma or things that have made them who they are today, a la what gives them depression now. After we see John Walker's moment of him just not really paying attention to his baby, being focused on losing the Captain America mantle, lashing out on his wife, where we then later find out she left him and took the baby. After that moment is over and they have climbed that mile-long pipe up, there's this subtle thing where John Walker looks back down to that mile-long hole, and it actually looks like he's wanting to jump, like he's wanting to end it right there because of how disgusted he is by his actions from that moment with the baby and his wife. And I was like, oh my, these guys really are the Suicide Squad. I don't know. It was things like that in this movie that I felt was really touching and refreshing and brought this movie up a notch from your standard comic book film. Like, even going back to right before the incinerator goes off and the team doesn't know if Ghost is about to open the door or just let them fry because, hey, they just met. They're not friendly or loyal to each other. When the countdown is going down to like 5, 4, and the camera zooms in on Yelena and you just see her close her eyes and accept death. Woo! That's some powerful stuff. I love that the movie was able to do that. Now, I am going to get to Bucky Barnes, but let's talk about the Sentry part of all this. Okay, so I like some things about Sentry and I didn't like some things. So the things I really did like about Sentry is how they used his powers and abilities from the comics to kind of connect all the Thunderbolts and really emphasize this mental allegory of depression. So essentially in the MCU version, we find out that Val has been trying to create her own super soldier, almost her own version of a Superman who could also work as almost like her boy toy where she commands it and nobody's going to tell her otherwise. And because she has this super person, she'll never lose her position and power in the government. Well, it looks like that plan failed and all the test subjects died except for Bob. We learned that he was actually a drug addict with a very traumatic past, had an abusive father, and although they were testing him for the Sentry project, he was never going to end up being the guy if it was successful. He was just going to be a guinea pig. And so the way they kind of explain it is that this superpower ability they gave him, the power of 1,000 exploding suns, as it's described in the comics, along with giving him those powers, the darker, depressed side of him also manifested into its own persona, giving this darker side the ability to make others relive their trauma. I like that part of it, and I'm actually kind of disappointed we didn't get to see little memories of like Bucky or Red Guardian or even Ghost. The only people throughout the movie that got that was Yelena, John Walker, and Val. All really great moments, but man, I would have liked to have seen the others and what their most traumatic thing would have been. So I like that aspect of it. I think it was finally when it was time for him to be in full costume and then become the Sentry, and he kind of turns on his friends just because Val told him to. Like, that felt a little contrived. I'm glad he didn't want to kill them all the way. He's like, hey, they're not a threat to me. I'm not going to kill them. And it did lead to a really cool action scene where each member of the Thunderbolts are just fighting Sentry, and you get a real idea of just how extremely powerful this guy is. Even if I'll admit in those moments it looked a little too CGI heavy and some of them turned into like PlayStation characters, still a really fun scene. I just feel like the movie could have spent more time instead of kind of rushing through that, because by the end of it, once they save him and they relieve him of his trauma by building a community and being there as friends, great allegory, his mind is just conveniently wiped. He doesn't know what happened or that he has this darker half. And we're good for now. We got to lead into Avengers Doomsday. That's to me where I was like, okay, that's where the Marvel stuff has to kick in. And this movie felt less standalone towards the end. And even just commenting on his costume, I think the costume is fine. Not a big fan of the blonde hair, but I guess they had to do it just because it's comic accurate. I think maybe they'll give the costume a change come the next movie, because Louis Pullman is officially confirmed to be in Avengers Doomsday, and I do have some theories on how they're going to use his powers in Avengers Doomsday. But now here's where I want to get into the character I was hinting at in my spoiler-free review of someone I thought whose character motivations just were not making sense by the end of this movie, and that's Bucky Barnes. So starting from the top with Bucky, I think it's so interesting, and they even showcase this in Captain America Brave New World, that Bucky is now a member of Congress, that he has a seat in the House, and that he thinks this is the best use of his abilities, is trying to change the system within legally through passing laws and stuff like that, which honestly on paper, I have no problem with that. I think that actually does work, even if it caught me off guard the first time I was like, Bucky's a congressman. He's murdered a lot of people. Then again, probably a lot of congressmen have. But it ended up working nicely as part of him also feeling unfulfilled like a lot of other members of the Thunderbolts, because he's trying to get stuff done. He's trying to be a member of Congress, but it's just not fitting for him. This is obviously an environment that isn't working in his favor, and it feels like he's not getting much done. I will say, though, I love the hype moment they gave him on the desert freeway where he's saving the Thunderbolts and he's taking down the cars one by one with ease. It feels like sometimes they make the Winter Soldier so OP and very powerful, and other times he's just used to show how much other characters are more powerful. And it usually involves with him trying to hit somebody with his fist and getting stopped like it's nothing. But okay, the part I was mainly talking about, and my mind has kind of slightly changed on that in the second viewing, is come by the end of the film, as we all could have guessed, we find out what the asterisk stands for in Thunderbolts, and that's the New Avengers. And holding off on that title reveal for just a second, Bucky ends up going along with them and actually joins in the Thunderbolts and becomes the new branded Avengers for the current MCU. And that motivation to me just did not make sense by the end of the movie. I felt like it just did not work with who the rest of the Thunderbolts are. The reason I say that is because every member of the Thunderbolts has done something wrong. They've been considered a villain in the past and have had blood on their hands. Obviously the Winter Soldier too, but his excuse is a lot more valid because he was under mind control. He never made those choices. If anything, I think his mind is way more aligned with someone like a Steve Rogers, who wants to do good, wants to do things morally the right way. So when we come to by the end of the movie and Val is the one responsible for all this, has been doing human testing, getting a lot of people killed, doing shady stuff just so she can stay in power, and she's like, oh no, but I'm gonna make you a legal Avenger now. All right, I'm gonna go with that because I'm Bucket Barnes. That's where that character motivation didn't make sense to me. And there's even more stuff that we'll get into with the post-credit scene with Bucky deciding to be okay with this that causes conflict with Sam Wilson. I mentioned I'm kind of forgiving it the second time I watched the movie because I was able to again catch the monologue that Bucky gives to the Thunderbolts when they're all tied up, telling them that, hey, I've kind of been in your position. I've been looked at as the bad guy. The answer is definitely not to run away from this thing. It's to face it head on and try and redeem yourself, which is what I'm doing. So I totally understand him sympathizing and almost seeing eye to eye with these guys, but I feel like the actual Bucky would not take the offer to become a new Avenger and help out his friends. The Bucky we know would be like, sorry Val, you did wrong, time to go to jail. And that's that. Obviously, though, the movie couldn't end that way because Val calling them the New Avengers is what sets us up for Avengers Doomsday. So it's a contrived thing we have to go through because it leads us into the next step. It's not a thing that ruins the movie for me, but like I said, I feel like it conflicts with the character a little bit. But okay, now that can segue us into the actual post-credit scene of the movie. So there are two of them. The first one is a joke one, which I'll just use this to actually talk about how I feel about the Thunderbolts name change. We all knew the Thunderbolt asterisk was eventually going to lead to something Avengers related. Like, it's just so obvious. But I thought it would be something more like the Dark Avengers, right? Or West Coast Avengers. Having the title New Avengers, I was like, okay, a little surprised by that. And them even becoming the official Avengers, actually staying in the old Watchtower that Val has taken over. And because of her position in government, they are the official United States Avengers. And well, two things. I've seen a lot of fans complain about this saying, oh, this Avengers lineup sucks. And other people who say, oh, now the future of the MCU makes sense. Now we know who will be the Avengers we follow for the next couple movies. Y'all ain't paying attention. They make it very clear after they're announced as the New Avengers that the public hates them. We, even the audience, aren't supposed to love the idea that they are the official Avengers now. There's a ton of articles and photos that pop up where they're called the B-Vengers, or is this Avengers a joke? Can they actually save us? Who are these guys? And I think that's something that's gonna play into Avengers Doomsday. It's like, yes, they might be the official Avengers team, but they're not equipped for what we're about to go through in Avengers Doomsday. This mockery of a team is not going to be enough, and they're going to need real heroes to be able to finish the job. So I don't think at the end of the day, when everything's said and done, this is our permanent New Avengers. I think this is just the Avengers in place, setting up our heroes where they need to be, so then other heroes can join them up. I don't think when Secret Wars and Avengers Doomsday is all said and done, this will still be the official team. It's gonna change a lot. But there is a part of me happy for these guys like Red Guardian, who is getting back into that limelight, and he had that great moment where he saved a little girl, and then she got freaking blasted away by Sentry. That was a crazy moment. So there's my thoughts on that. But now getting to the actual post-credit scene that happens at the end of this movie that, was nice, long, and really gives us a clear picture of how we're going into Avengers Doomsday. So it opens up, it's been 14 months later, they have Avengers logos, new suits, which I'm just gonna say it, I hate Bucky's new suit. I think it's supposed to pay homage to the comics, and the director of Thunderbolts mentioned that he didn't direct that post-credit scene, that it was done by the creative team currently making Avengers Doomsday. So a lot of these suits could end up being the official look for the heroes throughout the movie, and again, Bucky's was the only one I wasn't in love with. Everybody else's suits look fine, and I'm sure they're still working on the Red Guardian. He's not going to wear that NASCAR-looking thing. But in this scene, we are again told 14 months later, the public still don't like them as the official Avengers. Walker mentions that there's nasty memes online of people not liking them. I think it's still so hilarious that even 14 months later, his shield is still a taco. How did that never get fixed? Why wouldn't they reissue him a new shield? But whatever. But the really interesting part about this is that they have a conversation that Sam Wilson, our current Captain America, is not happy about them being the official Avengers, using the name Avengers, to the point that Sam Wilson has even copyrighted the name so they can't use it. They even made it sound like Sam is putting together his own team. That's again also where I was shocked, where Bucky mentions he tried talking to Sam, trying to figure out some sort of compromise, but that talk did not go well, and now they're not on good speaking terms. I'm like, oh, what? These guys are supposed to be bros, and off screen they just had a big fight that cost them their friendship? It again doesn't feel like Bucky would go that much out of his way for these new group of people when Sam is like the guy Steve Rogers chose to continue the shield. Bucky, shouldn't you be following in his footsteps? But whatever, it's probably going to lead to some awesome dynamic and scenes in Avengers Doomsday. And maybe this is me stretching things a bit, but I feel like it'd totally be possible, since they actually mentioned that there's a legal battle now for the name Avengers. Is this how they then throw in Charlie Cox Daredevil into the movie? Why not? But I think the obvious thing that's going to happen is when Doomsday starts occurring and trouble is afoot, the Thunderbolts new Avengers are then gonna have to team up with whoever Sam Wilson has put together. And I can think of a few names, especially based off the casting chairs that were revealed for Doomsday. Well, I think that's gonna include Chris Hemsworth, Thor, Paul Rudd, Latita Wright as Black Panther, because Wakanda does make Sam Wilson's suit, so obviously they would be on his team. Danny Ramirez is Falcon, Shang-Chi, just based on the official names that we know are part of the movie. Those, I think, are some of the members that'll be part of the Sam Wilson team, and they'll have to drop whatever feud they have to team up and fight this threat, which, speaking of the threat, oh, what a freaking hype moment, man. I had not been that excited in a post-credit scene in a very long time. And if you saw my spoiler review for Captain America Brave New World, you know how much I hated the post-credit scene of that movie and how dumb it was. This right here, buddy, oh boy, is a post-credit scene that gives me the chills and has me looking forward to what's next. So again, we see Yelena and Bucky mention that there is some sort of space threat, so they pull up a satellite image of something entering the atmosphere, and lo and behold, it's actually the spaceship for the Fantastic Four. I will admit this kind of now gives away the ending for the Fantastic Four, but there are still some unanswered questions. We all figured that would be happening, that the Fantastic Four would find some way to go from their world to ours, because again, the Fantastic Four we're about to see are in the multiverse. They're in their own universe. And so are they coming to Earth because their planet blew up like it's being teased in the trailer and Galactus got to them? Or did they save the day and are aware that Galactus or some other threat like Doom is on their way to this Earth and they're coming here just to warn us and help us? I'm thinking it's going to be the latter, and so we all kind of figured, though, the movie would end that way. But the question is still up in the air whether their planet got destroyed or it's okay. The only other theories I have now about what could happen is how they're going to end up using Sentry in Avengers Doomsday. Because it does end with saying that the new Avengers and Bob will return. And you get a small small moment with Bob in the post-credit scene where he says, yeah, sorry, I can't be much help. If I did, the other guy would come out, meaning the void, the darkness. So they kind of just have Bob there as a last resort where, hey, if he's really needed, he'll come out, but there is a risk that the void comes out again. There's either two things they end up doing with Sentry. One, he's just used as cannon fodder to show how strong Doctor Doom or whatever other villain there is. Because again, they just showcased us that Sentry is Superman level powerful. The guy is untouchable, super strong. And if you throw someone that strong up against Doctor Doom and Doctor Doom kills him right away, well then that just establishes to the audience, hey, that guy you thought was super strong, this guy's even stronger. I mean, that's kind of what they did with Thanos when he fought the Hulk, and Thanos won. But two, and what I think they should do, and if they don't, it's a real missed opportunity, I think using the Void's powers of being able to see someone's backstory / trauma is probably how we'll get our answer of the backstory involved with Robert Downey Jr.'s Victor Von Doom. That's where I could see the Sentry actually being used in a way that would make sense for the movie, is that maybe they send Sentry after Doctor Doom, he has a tussle with him, and we get a moment where Sentry is able to put him in the Void, and that reveals us the backstory to this specific version of Doctor Doom, possibly revealing like when his face got scarred and had to put on the mask, or his motivation for being evil and wanting to take over the multiverse. There's fan theories out there that this version of Doctor Doom is actually going to steal the face from a Tony Stark out there, and that's why he looks like Robert Downey Jr. So we could get that intel. So that's how I see them using the Void as an actual storytelling method in Avengers Doomsday. But my biggest fear is that they just use him to showcase how strong Doctor Doom is and they kill Sentry right away, which would be a waste because Louis Pullman was really great in the role. All in all, very happy with the Thunderbolts. Finally puts me on a path where I'm excited to see what's next. I cannot wait for these new Avengers to interact with Sam Wilson's Avenger team, with the Fantastic Four, and this ensemble cast is already looking so exciting for Avengers Doomsday. And I really wasn't able to say I was that thrilled and excited after like something like Brave New World. This is what I throw out to you guys though. What did you think about the Thunderbolts? Your thoughts and theories? Anything else? Be sure and like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at 3C Films or on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always, I'm Chris. Take care.